time. And as all of you know, Mr. Vijeta Shastri is joining us as well. Very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Jagat.
Today is a epic day. Yesterday was epic also. Vijeta's birthday, and today is the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi. Was that planned? Something I think you both
I
have
don't
planned.
think so. I don't think so. But I have to check with him maybe sometime later in the future.
He's on Vidphone, vidphone.me
This one.
slash mk. Anyway, fantastic. Shall I just get started, or you want to give an introduction?
Hey, no worries, Jagat. Please go ahead. I mean, there's so many wonderful interactions and insights that is being shared across Vidphone. Thank you as a founder who has to hustle and who has to grow and make money. The fact that you're spending time to build community and share insights and bring founders together is super awesome. So happy to be doing something great for the stakeholders and the ecosystem. So please go ahead, Jagat.
Always. So very quickly, let me just brief. Today is Gandhi Jayanti, and as we all know, there is a lot of discussions around startups. Today, there is more emphasis on startups and startup founders to really turn around the economy. I hope I'm audible. Uh, Everything okay? All right. So I think let me very quickly get straight to the topic. And best way to do that is to share my screen, and I will share some thoughts. I hope the screen is visible to everybody. And here is the bit of the layout of what we'll be doing today. Today we're calling this startup Satyagraha. Now, why startup Satyagraha? I think every startup today is on a freedom movement. It's a freedom movement for themselves, for the founders, for the team, and more importantly, I think what this unlocks is the true talent of a country. And when we look at the word Satyagraha, it's a wonderful word. It's obviously two words put together. In Sanskrit, we call it Sandhi, Satya and Graha. So the word Satya, I think all of us know, not the movie by Ram Gopal Verma, but this is Satya, truth, and Graha, which is more of being on the way, right? So it is, how does one hold on to the truth? So let us look at what is the truth for a startup. When we look at three startup truths, the first truth that I would like to share is that startup failure is a harsh reality. The second is that most startups will not raise funding. And the third startup truth is that grassroots startups have a hard time. Let's look at the first point. Startup failure is a harsh reality. And one of the main things that we should define is what is failure. We all probably understand what is success, because success, again, different people may kind of have a different terminology or a different metric for success. But some of the ways that we have defined success, maybe right or wrong, has the company been able to raise funding, for example? Many times in the ecosystem, people do measure the startup success with its ability to raise funding. And of course, that's valid, because not only are they able to convince the founders and the founding team and the internal ecosystem, they're able to convince also somebody who's outside of that startup. Not only to give them some pep talk or an advice, but to really put their money where the mouth is. So once you have this, funding is obviously a big metric. So when we look at that, many startups are not raising funding. So could that be startup failure? Now, the way I look at startup success or failure, and this I'm just sharing as a founder myself, and I'm open to other founders who are joining us or who may be watching on YouTube Live. How do you define what is your success or failure? I think that's very important. And to me, for a long time, the way I have defined startup success or failure. Now, failure definitely is quite straightforward, the way I see it. If you have quit, you have failed. And there is really no two ways about it. The moment and this quitting could happen for various reasons, right? Most often there is probably no product market fit, there's not enough cash in the bank, or the founder is, or the founding team has kind of, run through their own steam. But the way that I define success to me, and it's something that many of us can think about, and especially as startup founders, because there is nobody here to give you some kind of a certificate, or to give you promotions. As a startup CEO, you are, there is no real promotion left, right? So how do you define it? So the way I define it is, am I better today than I was tomorrow? And is our startup better today than we were, sorry, yesterday, right? And day to day, are we getting better? This is really from the beginning, and I'm very, open about this, is that there's a great saying that I've heard, saying that, for a cricketer or a batsman, you are only as good as your next innings. And I think this was said, I don't know, probably Gordon Greenidge or Desmond Haynes, one of the great West Indian openers, one of them said it, I think. And the way I look at it also is that you are only as good as your next deal. And this failure is a reality for startups. We all know that 95, 97% of startups fail, depending on which source and whether it's failure at 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. But over 90% of startups fail. So this is the harsh reality. The second is that most startups will not raise funding. And when I mean funding, I mean external funding, not from the promoters or people. Now, funding is again a source of cash in the bank. I think this is the way we need to look at it. Ultimately, a startup fails if they run out of cash in the bank. And whether you have investor money or whether you have a better source of money, which is customer money, you need to ensure that there is cash in the bank. So if you're looking only at startups who are looking to raise external funding, then that may be a very small percentage of the whole startup population. So I think what's very important is that startups need to, and we're talking here that startups need to learn to bootstrap. Just sharing my own experience. Of course, we raised a seed round last year. But before that, I had bootstrapped this company for 9 years. It is actually almost my 10th year that I was starting that we managed to raise a small amount of funding. So have we failed or have we succeeded? Well, to me, definitely, I don't think we have failed, because we are there, and I think today's avatar of what we are doing with Vidphone, Vidphone.me, is definitely better than our yesterdays. So I think one thing that startups need to understand is that external funding might help you and kind of help scale, but what's important is that founders need to know how to bootstrap their business until at least you have indication of external funding. And the third startup truth, which I think is very valid when we talk of Gandhi Jayanti, Mahatma Gandhi, is that the grassroots startups have a very hard time. Typically, you will see that what I mean by grassroots startups, probably these are startups who are founded by really the common man. These are not your elite IIT or NIT or IIM or alumni, nor are they people who have worked at XYZ company for so many years, having a lot of expertise in that domain. And when we look at a lot of entrepreneurs, there has always been a concentration in terms of eliteness. And the reality is that if you are probably not from these places, it seems like they're having a hard time, right? And I think once we accept these truths, I think life becomes a lot more simple. And I think this was one of the investors had shared with me a few years ago on this, saying that the default state of a startup is failure. And while that's a harsh statement, it's the truth, right? It's what we call sad but true. So would like to just get Vijeta as well. What are your thoughts, Vijeta? Any other thoughts you may have on this? Any other truths you want to add? Because this is an evolving thing. It's not a 10 commandments or 3 commandments. There could be 4, there could be 40. So anything that you feel with your own experience, Vijeta? You're on mute. Mic on. Yeah.
So Jagat, I think what you're saying is there, but then and unfortunately, we also have this factor in life that all is fair in whatever they say, like love, war, whatever, and it is war out here. It is a tough situation, and I think the one thing about the founders is that, I mean, recently I just will share with you, Jagat, we had some webinars with people from outside of India, and a lot of companies have, of course, got their base of operations here, but they have got a global vision and they're trying to, get customers from all over the world. So how does one really compete? Because look, the government will do what it wants, and I was just talking to a few folks on this, Jagat. Think about this, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's counterpoint, but still,
No, no,
the
absolutely. I
yeah,
agree. I'm
yeah,
not saying that you should not raise funding.
yeah, yeah. So the
I'm
government,
saying that not everyone is getting funded.
not everyone will get funded.
Yeah,
Okay, it's going to be very very tough.
correct.
So even at Thai, at the Thai chapters, we work with a lot of early stage startups. We help them to get mentored. We help them to apply to all the accelerator partners that we work with. The Elevate program is also just one more Elevate program is started, and we have Satya and the KTech team. They want hundreds of applications,
Yeah,
whatever 70, 80 startups will be chosen, and a lot of success stories of startups and founders are there for several years who have not raised a single round of funding but are profitable. We have so many of those.
right.
And also, how does one really compete? Because it's very tough. I
Yes,
mean, let's think of it from the government point of view, Jagat, right? All these multinationals who are here in India, they create thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. They have taken up office space. They pay lots and lots of taxes. The employees pay lots of taxes. So what does the government do? Who do they support? So that's a catch-22 situation.
correct.
Think about all the the patents that are being filed, the employment that is being created by the large MNCs. What do you do?
Right.
And yes, I know that a lot of investment that is happening right now is going to companies that have already got some seed funding or angel round funding or pre-series A, and they're getting the next 2 3 rounds of funding. We all know what's happening with the Reliance story, Jagat. So what does a founder do?
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll
that's the
get to
catch.
that. Wonderful. That's a great
What does
question.
a correspondent do? Because all this is fine. That they're not getting funding, they're struggling.
Yeah,
I mean, one has been reading about all the Indian founders getting together and questioning the multinationals, etc., etc. But then, that's how life is,
yes,
right?
that's true.
The
Even I was
big,
hearing that. In fact,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the article, I think,
Yes, yes, yes. Everyone is following the playbooks of Amazon of 20 years, Microsoft of 20 years, because everyone has his ambition to be there.
correct.
So all the best, but let's see what goes on, right? So that's how.
So I think the great point there. But what we must realize is, let's say that for a moment that Google or Amazon were not there. I don't think I would say that every startup is on AWS, and every startup is optimizing their SEO and using Gmail and Drive. So yes, what you said is absolutely right. These are all these are pioneers of the whole internet business in the world, and that I will just get to in my next couple of points. I think it's wonderful. So I think let me just get back to then, with your permission, then to the slides, to the mind map. So this is the harsh truths. I mean, this is how life is in the startup world, I would say. And I would add the fourth truth there, which, as Vijeta said, is that the hard truth is that this is the truth, right? So this is really look at rule number 1 2 3. I think that's important. And coming to that, now we get to this other very important point, which actually happened recently. So let us debate this, because if you look at Mahatma Gandhi's life, one of his very important things was called the Quit India movement, in 1942. I think very, very powerful movement. And of course, one can argue that that was more as a political struggle, and the startup world, or as an India business world, it's definitely a financial competition, right? It's a financial kind of battle. So this is just a debate. I mean, I just wanted some views. And do we believe that creating this closed walled ecosystem is beneficial, or do we believe that keeping it open is the way to go? And both of them have a lot of what we can say Gandhian insights here. One is, of course, very similar to what he did with the Quit India movement. Say, Simon, go back before that. We say no to all the other countries' businesses coming into India. And the second is his wonderful thing of saying, okay, let's have all of them together here. And all of that only leads to a lot more stronger founders and very, very heavy competition. Whether it's completely legal all the time or not, there are various cases. So we'll not get to that discussion. But both of them have Gandhian principles in the sense that one of them is the nonviolent civil disobedience kind of angle, and the other being that there is a tolerance aspect to it that says that everybody is inclusive. This is not about having an exclusive set of India only, or things like that. So I think both of them have their own benefits, good and bad. And one of the ways that a startup needs to look at, because this is an Indian kind of context, how is India going to look 1 or 2 years from now? Are we going to have this, place where we're banning out China and probably tomorrow banning out other countries, or are we going to say that the internet is sacrosanct? It is probably beyond governments, beyond, I would say, a lot of other countries and businesses. The internet is a huge, very, very, high level thing, and this is not to be tampered with. And things are just the way they are, right? So again, opening this up just for a conversation, few minutes, we can decide how the startup founders, what kind of context that they're probably going to be looking at in the next 1 or 2 years. Vijit, are you there? I mean, any points?
Yeah. No, Jagat. Please, I'm listening in. Sorry.
Okay, no,
When I mute, I always take these 2 seconds extra to
I
unmute.
know. Come back to the tab also. So
Yeah. So I'm very careful, because too many times I've unmuted myself by mistake. So,
yeah, no, but just your views. I mean, you're in the thick of things,
yeah,
and obviously you are
definitely,
exposed to
definitely. So
all sides.
I just was making some notes and going through stuff, right?
Yeah,
So see, a lot of the founders, if you see, Jagat, are not just that they're just fresh out of college, or they're just coming out and trying to do something. Okay, they're experienced, they've worked, so they do understand maybe the harsh ground reality. Okay, and many of the things that we try to do, and whether it's at NASCOM or the Thai chapters or many of the other beautiful enablers, is can we take more and more of these founders to possible platforms and forums? But yes, considering the fact that India Jagat needs millions and millions of entrepreneurs, each of them trying to generate 15, 20 jobs, and that's the only way that the country can move forward.
in fact, you have taken my one of my main points. I
Yeah.
don't know, was I sharing my whole mind map
Yes, yes.
before the hook?
Absolutely, Jagat. See,
Yeah,
because jobs are required, right? Ultimately, I mean, we're not living in an utopia. We are not trying
absolutely.
to run away from the fact that we also need food to eat. We need to have all that. And opportunities are there. The competition is very intense. And unfortunately, the opportunities also are shrinking a bit. Okay. And what really matters, I think, Jagat, and this is something that, I mean, all these various other accelerators, innovation teams, everyone says is if you can show impact and you can show it fast and you can show it with the least amount of friction,
Yeah,
and you know how to become a vendor. I know this sounds terrible, but if you want corporate enterprise as your client, you got to be a vendor. So you got to be super fast in those kind of aspects. If you like you who's working with coaches, who's working with trainers, who's working with salespeople, who's working with the education industry, the telemedicine industry, or I think you're doing a lot of work with folks like Kutum, right? Who are looking at the smaller parts of the Karnataka and the smaller towns, generating incomes, generating employment. You
yeah,
have to really create so much of value for them because you have intense competition. And look, let me be clear. I have come from the retail industry also, Jagat. There is a loss leader concept.
right,
Okay. So you're very okay to say that, okay, I will spend and give this for free because I want people to adopt my platform. You want people to come and buy other products. You want them to use the entire suite of products. Is it fair? Is it unfair? I don't know. And I don't want to comment on this also, right?
right.
Because that's the way the world works, Jagat, whether you like it or
Agreed, agreed. I think
not, right?
absolutely valid. So what you're saying is 100% right. But
Correct.
Mahatma Gandhi was a lawyer, I think, right? And my 2 cents on this is that, of course, I also think on both sides. Of course, there was the contest by India, government of India, about the video conferencing. They see video conferencing, there. And on the other side, I would say that all of the things that we have learned, my journey really started 2000, probably 2005, 6. I started off with internet and things. 2010, we really started off. We have learned everything from Valley, right? I mean, everything that we do, be it UI, UX, product distribution, growth hacks, nothing is built in India. So one side of me says that there is a lot of respect for these companies and what they have done. So the best way that I think it should go, and that considering the fact that Mahatma Gandhi himself was a lawyer, it all depends on the corporate law and the systemic framework that the Indian government puts together, right? There should always be healthy competition, but there should never be a case where there is outright market monopolization, right? That's I think the best thing, and I think I'm confident once we have a mature startup ecosystem here, I think that's already on its way to happening, right? So this is, I think, this is my 2 cents, right? Either way, the startup founder has to be ready, whether we are having a inclusive, completely open kind of ecosystem or a closed ecosystem. The competition is going to be there, and the only way that, as we said, what does a startup founder do? Now we come to this very, very important part. Is my screen visible? Everything okay? Okay, just assuming that everything's okay, I'm going to go ahead. This is again in tune with the government of India, and we're having a very, very patriotic and nice feeling today because it's Gandhi Jayanti as well. The Prime Minister, of course, came up with the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and one of the main things is Atmanirbhar startups. Now, what is self-reliance for a startup? Atmanirbhar, of course, is translation, and translated loosely to, I would say, self-reliance. And what is this for a startup? What does a startup do, or what does a startup founder look at? And I think this comes to 3 things that define a business, in my view. And a startup, we should always understand that a startup is, again, a business, right? It's not something that is a completely different kind of thing. Of course, Steve Blank's view has that the way you approach a startup, that is a temporary organization built to create scalable and sustainable business models, not Steve Blank's definition. But the fact is that a startup from day one is a business. And the most important thing here is the customer. Now, the customer does not care whether you're a startup or an enterprise. And I think that's the beauty of the market. And while it's also, it does seem that many startups are facing an uphill battle because you're always having large incumbents, you're short of money, you may be short of team, you may be short of talent. But I think the fact is that for a customer, he doesn't really care about these things. He or she is availing a product or service from you. And bottom line is that it should work. That's it. And I think the best way that a startup can really compete and become self-sufficient or self-reliant is that when they have intense customer focus. The second, of course, is that the revenue aspect of it. Now, customers, revenues, and profits, I think, define a business. Nothing beyond this. Everything, I think, is a function of this, right? And the second is, of course, revenue. Now, revenue in an Indian context, I'm talking of startups here in India specifically, may also be applicable to a large number of countries, developing countries where the typical population may not have a per capita of something like the US or UK, right? They may not be at as an individual. If you're doing a B2C company, what does the individual have as a disposable income? Right? How much would the customer pay or this consumer pay from his pocket that actually you can call as your revenue for a B2C startup? For a B2B, of course, it is how much does the business or the enterprise have to pay towards your product or service. In India, we do know that overall, the cost of living, the average per capita, everything, I would say that there is at least probably a 90% kind of change. I don't know, probably compared to the US. But let's assume at least about 60-70%. So if something is, let's say, $100,000 in the US, we may look at something like maybe a $10,000-$20,000 here in India. Now, considering the fact that the transaction value is going to be a lot lesser, assuming the current state of affairs, what that means is that the number of customers needs to be high, and the revenue and the customers are kind of interlinked. If you're able to have high ticket sizes, you can have lesser number of customers. But if you have a very, very low ticket size, you really have to play the volume game here in India. And I think Indian startups need to understand that if we are catering to the Indian market, or if most of our business is here in India, now the revenue aspect has to be very, very competitive. And the way we kind of put it is the quality has to match that of, let's say, America or Japan, and the price has to match that of China. Right? That's kind of how we have to think of our products and our services. at least for now. I'm not saying that this will be the state 2 years from now or 3 years from now, when overall I think the youth in India will really kick in, and overall there will be an increase in our per capita. We have to grow that from the current state at least 10 to 15 times to be a really big superpower, economically. So I think the very big focus here is ensure that the revenue or the ticket size is very, very, it may be small, because you're catering to a really large audience, right? We also, not only on the consumer side where we have over 1 billion users, but I think even in the companies, when you look at, we have the entire listed companies, which I think we have a large number of companies on the Sensex and the Nifty, also on the stock exchanges. We have a very, very large number of startups now, which are again growing. Huge number of SMBs, probably the most in the world. I don't know. We have, I'm sure that India probably, along with the US, have the largest number of freelancers in the world. We by far have the largest number of small stores or kirana shops in the world. Probably, I don't know, 10 million stores, supporting up to 50 million people. So the volume is really there in India. And I think the secret for Atmanirbhar here in India, Atmanirbhar startups, is play the volume game, make it very, very affordable so that people are able to use it and really spread that, kind of customer advocacy. And people are talking about your business to the others. And of course, we are a fairly vocal country. We enjoy talking to our people around us. And I think the word will spread very, very fast. This is my second, kind of note on how startups can be Atmanirbhar. First is to do with the customer, volumes, the revenue, which is the lower ticket size. And now the last part, which is to do with profits. Now, this could be debatable, right? You could say that a large company like Amazon pays very little taxes, as we all know. Other companies which are always looking at ways to minimize the tax outgo. What can be the profit after tax is I think a very, very important metric on the whole financial sheets. So profits, I think, is very important, because let's see what is the purpose of profit. Now, business we always associate with profit, right? It's the way it is. If there is a business, you are out there to make a profit. But I think this is where Mahatma Gandhi's message becomes very important. If we don't have certain moral commitments or a moral or a philosophical view of profits, we may get into a state where there may be other antitrust issues here in India with Indian companies. But let's say that the profits that a company generates, a large part of it actually goes out to serve society and to help, the lower sections or the underprivileged people. We can broadly call it as CSR, as corporate social responsibility. But that gives a very big anchor for you to ensure that we are making profits. Because if we are not having profits, we don't have disposable income to directly impact society. And to me, I look at the business this way. Of course, a business is the number one thing for any startup entrepreneur or a founder or a CEO specifically, is delivering return for his shareholders. This is our number one goal, I believe, is to deliver returns to your shareholders, whoever it may be. But what will ensure that will happen? I would say that is really a byproduct of the value we are creating. And many times this value is only equated economically. But today we understand the importance of social capital. And social capital is built by reinvesting profits. Today in India, I think the percentage for companies, and I think this is only for companies, public companies, listed companies, which also pass certain criteria, maybe I think net worth, maybe profit or revenue, I think 100 crores, something like this. Only those actually are, by law have to commit 2% to CSR. But I think firstly that number should be increased. But more importantly, I think every startup founder must have probably this Gandhian trait of serving society. And I would say, let us see if we can put 5-10% of our profits back directly to society. What if, I think today, if the rich people in the world just donated a part of their money to the underprivileged sections, we would end poverty in one day. So I believe that this would form a very big core mission. Apart from, people typically start a company or do a startup. Generally, I've heard that it seems to be around making quick money. That should not be the goal. And I don't think also that that's going to work. You need to have some very, very powerful North Star that is guiding you in your life and in your startup. Because I believe that in startups, most of the days are going to be tough. You may have a few good days, but those few good days must compensate for all of the difficult days. And how are you going to get through these difficult days if only money is your motivation, or only if profit is the motivation? So if we can keep this higher ideal of serving society through our company, and saying that a larger percentage of our profit is actually going back into social causes. In India, we probably have the largest number of, I don't know, unfed people every day. We have the most number of poor people below the poverty line. We have women empowerment and women issues. We have heavy infant mortality still. We do not have the systems to take care of our elders. We also have environmental concerns where our green cover is being lost. We are unable to make sure that pollution is kept in check. Of course, Corona has done a big change, but look at the cities. They're in really bad shape. The lakes are dying. There are no trees. There are multiple number of causes that a startup can pick and say that this is our CSR, or we can call it a SSR, a startup social responsibility. And I think if a startup can take this up, say that maybe 5% of my profits as a company, we are devoting towards social causes. Trust me, that money is really money that you are investing, not only in terms of charity and in terms of social good, but it's the biggest marketing dollars that you will be spending. Youth of this country can see through marketing gimmicks, and they can see through real social capital. And I think this would be a very good way for Indian startups to take some principles from Mahatma Gandhi and implement it into their own startups. Keep the CSR aspect as one of the very important guiding factors, for your profitability. This is my just a small, kind of insight into Atmanirbhar startups, where we have customers, largest number of volume in terms of volume, the largest number of customers in the world, right here in India. In terms of the revenue, yes, we will start at very, very low prices in India, simply because of the per capita and the overall scenario. And I'm confident that in the next 2-3 years, India is going to grow to such an extent that you will see this, your minimum selling price that you will be starting with, that is going to go up 5-10 times. And the third most important, which I would say anchors the business, is the profits and the motive for the profits. Let us look at the motive of the profits, apart from only delivering value to the shareholders. That is still number one. But that is driven by what is our mission towards society. Can we devote a fair percentage of our profits towards helping this country directly and helping the underprivileged? So this is, just wanted to kind of say what a startup founder can think about, or how he can think about startups or running his startup with a Gandhian principle in mind. Of course, this is my view. People can have a lot of other views, and I'm happy to engage and learn from all of you as well. And of course, Vijeta as well, if you're there and you would like to share some thoughts. Of course, with each section, I would definitely want to have your insights as well.
Sure, Jagat. See, definitely Atmanirbhar, being self-reliant and being able to self-sustain yourself, because they say that the giving away equity just for the sake of giving it away or getting funding, you're giving a huge chunk of your heart, soul, and it's the most expensive form of money. Customer money is always the best. Being frugal is important, and I think you yourself, though you have raised a little bit of angel round and some bit of seed money, you are definitely someone who's bootstrapped and you want to do it that way. So I totally concur with those sentiments.
No, I may not. I'll just correct you there. Sorry to cut you. I'm not saying that I will continue bootstrapping. We have raised money. Yeah. And I believe that once you raise money, we have to look. And what's important is why we are raising the money. I think that's very important. It's not just raising money for the sake of raising money. Never. In fact, we
Correct.
have a large amount of what we have raised long time back still in the bank. Nothing
Correct.
changes. But the
Yeah.
next
So
round
that's
we raise, it will only be that once we have stability, once we are able to ensure to our shareholders more. Like already, I think the valuation and look at the growth for the investors over here, I think it's really compounded for them in the past 1 year. But only if we can assure our future investors or our existing investors also that we can deliver to you amazing returns. And I am confident of this personally. And as a team, we will not raise that money. So that's, I think, ethics from a startup founder as well. I think founders need to understand that if you want to raise money, you have to be very, very confident that you're going to deliver a massive kind of exit for them as well. So I think bootstrap startups, yes, you can bootstrap it a lot, but the moment you raise money, you have to do what the business demands. If you need to grow it fast, you need to have external capital. You need to keep all options open as well.
But then ultimately, Jagat, taking care of customers, making sure that you're earning money from customers is something that really matters. And I think at the various ecosystems, not just in Bangalore, but if you go to Mysore, you go to Bangalore, you go to Dharwad, Hubli, or you go to the other parts of the country, there's so many young and also not so young, right? Honestly, entrepreneurs who are trying to do many things, correct?
Yeah,
And many industries in the last 6 months to 1 year have taken a beating, but if they take some time out to get themselves going in terms of the digital skills, in
yeah,
terms of understanding how they can use video conferencing, for example, right? You can do product demos, you can do sales, you can do iterations, you can network with your team, you can do so many things. You can get to know your customer on a very personal level and at different time zones. You don't have to travel. So I'm not saying that the world should continue living like this. We all need to expand. Hopefully, everything, the heavy economic toll that certain industries have taken. But then let's see the pivots. Okay, you pivot towards a paying customer. You pivot towards innovation. Jagat, I think that's very critical. You have been in it for so many years. You are doing this. I know that micro pivots you're doing. A lot of the startups that we have been talking to during the League of Extraordinary Startup sessions that we have done, I think 18, and tomorrow is going to be the 19th. By the way, shout out 2 p.m. Please log in. We got a very interesting founder from Madhya Pradesh, Sumit RTI Wala. Okay, so he's growing an amazing guy. But we had so many other people, Jagat. We had Priyank,
yeah.
who's from Bhopal. By the way, I'm wearing his T-shirt, huh? The
Okay.
workspace T-shirt. We got to see you wearing your
Big
Vidphone T-shirt next, huh?
big shout out to Priyank and the workspace team. I think it's a tough
Yeah,
business
great.
right now, as the whole co-working. But I think Priyank's absolutely brilliant, and I think he's going to pull this off amazingly.
Correct. And so interesting, Jagat. The same way that you can provide services to founders and startups to, sell globally, he's trying to, help the co-working spaces, office spaces to come back to track, right? He's helping them to
Yeah,
get customers, etc. So everyone is trying their best. Everyone was in a deep shock, I think, for some time. Then Aronin, who's from Sastra Robotics, right? Then we have Vikram Rai. You know him well. He's been with you guys sitting. We used to have chai together from, the Vitor Health. And then we
right.
have got so many other folks who are trying their best. Mayank, who's there, who's trying to expand the foreign exchange and foreign currency business. So let's see
Parul,
how the world pans out. We should not.
Parul, Vikram,
Parul,
a
yes,
lot
why?
of them.
How can we forget Parul? Vikram,
Divya
Vikram
Rathod, I
Gulecha,
remember.
Lucio.
Yeah,
Yes, so many of those wonderful folks, right? And the agri-tech guys, correct? Divya Rathod, she's working on personal hygiene for so many years, making an impact, making a difference. And I just love the guys from the agri-tech field, right? They're doing in Peru, Bangladesh, they're doing in small towns of India, helping the farmers and the community. So there's inspiring stories, and you should. I think Jagat, you owe it to the world to share those YouTube links of videos or whatever in a bit. Let's see what happens, Jagat. So today it's now October 2nd. Let's talk in December or 2 months from now,
oh
and
yes. I am
let's go.
confident. I am very optimistic. And one of the things that I think all the LXS founders have kind of in common is what we were talking about now. Their intense focus on the customer.
Yeah,
I know that many of them there are still bootstrap probably,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but all of them are customer money, and
yes,
that's the beauty of the LXS team. I think that's
yes,
fantastic.
exactly,
So with your
exactly.
permission, again, I will continue in a couple
Yeah,
of last
yeah.
points
Hmm.
and continue this mind map. Let me look at today what we are defining as the Gandhian startup. And of course, we all know that a startup has to be lean. And if you look at Gandhi himself, he's an extremely lean yet fit person. If you look at a Gandhi, you do not look at somebody who is obese and very pampered or not fit. So I think this applies to a startup. If you're a startup, you don't have clear profitability visibility, and you have 300 people. Well, that's a ship that's headed towards only one direction. And one of the great examples that I would share is WhatsApp. I think all of us know that the time that WhatsApp got acquired by Facebook, their Android entire team was just 4 people. And I think it included the founders, Jan Koeman and Brian Acton. Just imagine that. You have 1 billion users and you have 2 co-founders and 2 people, something like this. So I think lean is a very, very important way to be in the Indian context. And lean means what? Lean means, it does not mean cheap. Lean means, basically no frills. We don't really, when you're a startup that's bootstrapped or you're getting started, you don't really need a fancy office. You don't need, high-end MacBooks. You don't need an iPhone. You don't need to take, the most expensive hotels on your travels. A startup founder has to be very lean. And I think the word, in fact, Mahatma Gandhi, I would just share because it's a very passionate topic for me. Mahatma Gandhi was a Jain. And one of the things about him is that they follow the concept, and even it's a Hindu concept of aparigraha, which is non-avarice. I think as a startup, and typically people who have been in large corporates, they're probably used to a way of lifestyle. Like it has to be this flight, it has to be this hotel, my daily allowance. But when you come to the startup world, I think the startup founders and all of us, I think, would agree is that we need to be lean, in terms of what we are doing. And the second is not so mean. There's people with lean, mean machine. Lean, but not so mean. This is the biggest difference between a startup founder and a large enterprise. Many times, large corporations are accused of being mean. Not that they're always mean, but they're accused of it. But I think the main thing that a startup founder must understand is do not be mean. Even if you have somebody who, forget about customers, there may be an event we go to and you may quickly figure out that there is no synergy there, and maybe the person you meet may not be of great value. But don't be mean there. I think it's very important to maintain that humility, to have that person-to-person connect, because not only for the fact that who knows tomorrow how things will change, but more importantly, this is how you live your life. You should, I think, as a startup founder, you need to basically treat your housekeeping staff as equally as you treat your COO or your investors. All of them at the same high level of respect. And I think once startup founders do that, they become very genuine. You're not just a startup there trying to pitch your idea to everyone you see, right? That should change. That's also mean. I mean, before even I meet somebody at a startup, I mean, he's telling me about the product, or why would we do that? I don't do that nowadays. I mean, of course, in our early days, maybe all of us have this habit of going ahead with our card and talking about or doing our elevator pitch. But I think that's mean. Without even me knowing who you are, I don't care about what you do. And as we all know, even investors, and rightly so, they fund people. They may not fund the business or the business model also. They fund the founders, they fund the teams. And I think there's a big reason for that, is that really the people is what makes the company. So I think lean, and then you look at not so mean, plus the social machine. Today, every business has to be a social business. The world is not in a state where things were 6 months ago, where people just wanted things and consumerism at its peak. Today, things have changed at such a large extent. It is really a battle for survival for every single inhabitant of planet Earth. So can you imagine how this shift has happened? 6, 7 months ago, people were not worried, hey, am I going to die in 15 days? Literally. But today that fear is there in everyone. So how can you just go and say that, hey, we're a business for profit, we're just doing this, buy our product? No. Can you truly help that person somehow? And I would just share a note here. One of the big reasons that we do Vidphone is to help large sections of society. I'll give you an example of one of the companies. These are, and I will do it because they have used our platform and they really connect companies in Chennai. Very, very away from the technology scene. They have nothing to do with video conferencing. And these are all the top, some of the directors of almost government kind of companies. And my father, one of their clients is this large company, and my father, of course, is 65 plus. He is somebody who's an inspiration and my role model. And my father, when he's, both of them, you would say, are not so tech savvy. I would use the word. They're great with their Microsoft Word and Excel, probably, but probably not when it comes to new apps. But look at what's happened. They are today conferencing every day. And I'm proud to say that they're using Vidphone. They're not using, foreign applications also. First of all, the fact that they are using video conferencing, which they were not doing, and it may seem very different to 65, 70-year-olds, but they are using an Indian platform. And this company, this organization helps, uh, they are probably the financial source for the entire, rural India. You can call them like a non-cooperatives and, these kind of organizations. So it is immense social capital. Those people in the rural areas cannot come to HDFC Bank or other banks in the cities and actually get loans. So I think if we can provide that kind of value, and of course there are other areas where, with education, where we're working with some schools, colleges, as well as some of our partners, where we're able to teach the students directly using video conferencing. What better can somebody do than helping the youth of this country, or the young kids and children, and giving them the power of knowledge? When you come to healthcare, what's better than a patient being catered to by a competent doctor? So these are aspects of social life that are heavily impacted by startups and technology. And the moment we are selling these kind of solutions, when we're selling solutions that today, as they said, it's not about, do I have a vitamin? Do I have a painkiller? Because there is huge pain today in the economy. I think there is very less room for vitamin related startups. And every Gandhian startup, or every startup today in India, has to focus on how can I be a painkiller. And the moment you are curing that pain, you are impacting society. So 3 high messages for the Gandhian startup: lean, not so mean, social machine. This is my thoughts on what we can call the Gandhian startup. I will again come back as we are doing. Your thoughts on these, Vijeta?
See, definitely, I think, C.K. Prahlad, who is actually one of the founding thought leaders at TAI also, I'm talking about many years back, God bless his soul.
Yes.
So he had written about this, right? The fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. You serve the customer well. You don't have to be the Leo Vuitton or the Mercedes or whatever of the world, or today you talk about Apple or whatever it is, but you serve the bottom of the pyramid, you give them tremendous value, you make their life better. And in your case, you're helping them to, connect with people. You talked about your father, you talked, not that he's at the bottom of the pyramid, but that it's not so very digitally savvy kind of folks. And then you helping a lot of smaller people and smaller businesses in towns in Bangalore or outside of Bangalore to grow. So that is serving the bottom of the pyramid. So they're not lost. They still have an opportunity to compete with anyone in the world because they understand these techniques, correct? And by doing all these sessions and doing all these activities, we're trying to help people gain the knowledge on how to do it, right? And Jagat, again, I'm calling out to you that you must create more of this how to videos and infographics, right? Because like, I mean, how does a teacher or a yoga trainer or a coach or a whatever, a school teacher or a small school or a small coaching class or an academy or a sales team, how do they learn how to, I mean, they should not get scared of using a video platform,
Right.
right? How to optimize, how to use screen share, how to do the settings. So I mean, if you do more and more of this how to,
Yeah.
yes, there is a lot of other free tools out there. There's a lot of competition, but so what? Just a hack, teach, train, educate, give the knowledge, and people will be grateful. And then loyalty. How do you build a loyalty, Jagat? I think that's the main key thing, right? I
Okay.
mean, though Apple may not be the right example, maybe, but you see, people who have been using an Apple phone or an Apple iMac, you use Apple products, correct? I don't think you want to, when despite so many other challenges of the, you have to be in that ecosystem, you have to pay a lot of money, and each time you're upgrading yourself, right? Even Akhil uses a MacBook Pro. Why? Because it's expensive, not because it's a status symbol for you, it's work.
Yeah.
So give value, help the people at the bottom of the pyramid to move up the pyramid, and
That's
make them. That's what.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. I think a couple of points there. Yes, in fact, I don't use an iPhone. I still use an Android because I'm
Ah,
a Android guy,
okay.
bottom of the pyramid guy. But Akhil uses an iPhone. I mean, he has the iPhone, and that's only for again our Apple application, iOS app. We don't. But as you said, I do use a MacBook Air, and the reason, of course, I've been on really junk desktops and broken laptops for many years. But of course, during the course of my digital agency business, of course, things were good, and the productivity, I look at it as how can I improve my own productivity, and certain things. Just comparing, I mean, I'm not taking a name of Apple or Microsoft, but if you just compare the two, for example, the presentation software, let's say a Keynote versus a PowerPoint, or Pages versus Word. I think for especially people who are, uh, I mean, I think everybody would like an Apple product, but I think again, as you said, it's the growth. Many people will start with an Android, and that applies to all sections of this premium and so-called mass market, right? It really comes down to that mass market, which I would say is bottom of the pyramid to middle of the pyramid, and then you have the premium end or the high end, which is the top of the pyramid kind of products. And I think that is important because it's driving the people forward, right? You start off at the bottom, you buy the basic things, and then you kind of use it, you understand these things, and then you evolve, and you go for higher end products. You understand what you need more specifically and look at premium products that may suit that, right? So I think that's wonderfully said. Of course, in India, my goal is not just to have companies that are catering to bottom of the pyramid. In 3 years from now, a lot more Indians should be affording premium things than they are affording today. That's what I think. One of the things, it symbolizes the growth of the country. So it would be wrong for me to say that I'm only supporting bottom of the pyramid. Absolutely not. Of course, it also depends. I mean, why are these things the way they are? What do we mean by bottom of the pyramid? Typically, we are meaning that the product is lesser cost, right? But the point is that at that lesser cost, it may also be doing slightly lesser things. And when you want more specific, more deep things, where there are people who have got a lot more knowledge and they have spent their time, you need to ensure that that cost also is higher because the cost has gone into that product. So of course, what the customer is paying will be more. So that would be a great way to look at the Indian story. Can we all start from the bottom of the pyramid? And can we move a large percentage of this to buying, let's say they're all on other laptops? I mean, I'm not saying that everyone on a Windows machine is poor or bottom of the pyramid. That's not my sentence, just metaphorically. If you can move everyone from Microsoft to Apple, maybe that's a symbol of country becoming rich. So yes, absolutely, great points. And coming to that lean, mean, social machine. Today we look at the last point now, and as we said, we have already covered that bottom of the pyramid startups. What does the Indian startup freedom movement look like? This is the last part of this which I want to cover. And why do I call this the freedom movement? Of course, today many people, as we discussed, not only in the Indian ecosystem but worldwide, feel that they are at the mercy completely of enterprise. I'm not saying enterprise is bad again. The goal of every startup is to become an enterprise tomorrow. Let me be very clear about that. But the point here is, can Indian startups really be free from the inside, internally? Can they feel free? Much like when I push an application onto my website, when I do a git push, it's reflecting on my domain immediately. There is no gatekeeper who's going to decide what comes on my phone. This is very, very important. I know that there was news that about the startup, App Store. I must make this announcement today as well, because we have worked on this, Akhil and myself, and we are launching India's first App Store. The only criterion is that you are an Indian app, and we are putting another criterion here where the consumer will be Indian. We are going to have this new App Store, which is completely democratic. The fees will be nominal. And most importantly, there will be openness in this whole App Store. You don't need to know anybody here. It doesn't matter. Everything is going to happen only based on the usage. apps that are used by people more and people have shared their love with, they're going to rank higher. And the ranks that and the apps that people are not using so much are going to rank lower. Now, this is very, very important. We are very clear that this has to be property of every Indian company. And by property, I mean that they are stakeholders here. Let me look at one thing, what will actually happen with the startup freedom movement. We will make this $5 trillion economy. I mean, people may ridicule me for this, but I will take the risk of making a statement and tomorrow being questioned for it. I believe that a $5 trillion economy is possible by 2025. I think the Prime Minister had mentioned this, and many, many people ridiculed it and are still ridiculing. Yes, the mathematics may not add up. I agree with that. For a growth from the existing 2%, I don't know, we were about 2 trillion, but I don't know after last quarter, whatever, let's assume $2 trillion economy to 5 trillion. It's a very, very high average, compounding rate annually. And mathematically, it may not make sense. But let us make this point here. Everything in the world is not logical. And many times, and I must say this again, science always only follows art. Art is the qualitative aspect of life. Science is the quantitative aspect of life. So while something may seem impossible mathematically, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or it cannot happen. After it happens, people will do the math and say, this is why it happened. And let me quickly share the roadmap that we have. And this is very important for us because, as you know, Vijeta and the rest of the audience who are watching us, we heart startups. The first mission here is for us to look at 1 million startups at a minimum of a 1 million valuation. A $1 million valuation does not seem a lot. It is approximately how much an average Y Combinator company is valued at, probably a little bit lesser than that. This, I believe, is $1 trillion. Someone can correct me on my math if I'm wrong. But a million startups at $1 million valuation each gives us an overall enterprise value, I think, of $1 trillion. All we need to do is change either it's 5 million startups at $1 million valuation, or it is 1 million startups at a $5 million valuation. This is the mathematics, and I'm not even considering the existing GDP. This is brand new GDP that's going to be built by the power of the Indian startup freedom movement. And I believe now people can question this. They can question the numbers. Can we have? I'm part of the NASSCOM 10,000 startups. And I'm sure that TAI as well is nurturing many, many startups. Let's just grow that 10x, 100x. And not only with NASSCOM and TAI, let us have 10 other organizations also doing this at this level of impact.
Yeah.
Won't we be able to produce 10,000 startups into whatever is the factor? I am confident we can. That's only going to happen if there is a duplication idea. If there is an idea that we are able to systemize, we are saying that, hey, this 1,000 startups cohort, we have perfected this model. And then that being replicated, and we have teachers who train the people, startup coaches, how to guide startup founders, each part, customer, revenue, product, design, HR. If we have this coaching system set up, I am very, very confident that we will blow these numbers out of the roof. So today, I know this has been a 1-hour conversation. And I'm happy that on the dot, I'm closing my last topic here, exactly at 8:30. Because one of the key things about Mahatma Gandhi that I learned is his discipline. And I think this is a big message for all of us as startup founders and as entrepreneurs. Number one is discipline. Talent does not matter so much. who you know may not matter so much. How much money you have or what your knowledge is may not matter so much. But if you have discipline, I believe that on a day-to-day basis, if you have continuous improvement, you will change the game completely in your own startup, your business, your financial life. So let us part with this very, very profound message on 2020, Mahatma Gandhi Jayanti. He was born and he took us to political freedom. Today, can India move towards economic freedom, financial freedom? By having this $5 trillion economy plus 5 trillion plus economy. Plus, let's add 2 trillion, which is existing, $7 trillion economy. Where would we be in the global stage? Definitely top 3 countries in the world. And if certain things go wrong in some other countries with 1 and 2, we are the number 1 country in the world by 2025. And I think every startup founder who's starting a company today or is in the startup game right now, guys, don't think that you are not fortunate as somebody in the US. I believe that we are going to be seeing a time that is just outstanding. This is my parting message right now. And I think let us all work towards this wonderful Indian startup freedom movement. Let us create 1 million startups at a minimum of $1 million valuation, creating $1 trillion enterprise value. Then let's look to scale that. Everybody knows how to scale now 10x. We are only saying scale 5x. This might be the route towards one of the very core aspects that Mahatma Gandhi said. I think his concepts of Swadeshi also. This truly self and of the country. Also, I would just like to take one moment to also mention another wonderful person who shares the birthday with Mahatma Gandhi. And I think it's unfair if we didn't do that. Great late Lal Bahadur Shastri as well, one of our premier prime ministers. And I think all of them stood for the Swadeshi idea. And by Swadeshi, we are not saying that block out everybody else. All we are saying is that the Indian startup ecosystem is able to self-sustain. And self-sustain means not that we don't want them, it is that we can be comfortable even without them. But if they come, welcome. We have Atiti Devo Bhava in India. Let us always ensure that people from all countries are able to come here, tap into our wonderful startup ecosystem, and build companies that they could not even build in their own countries. So with this message, I want to just say thanks for everyone who's joining us. I'm going to get back to Vijeta for some conversations. And if we have some people who want to join us, maybe Priyadarshi, maybe anybody else.
Priyadarshi is there, you can raise your hand. So Jagat, I'm giving you some homework to do. Okay, you got to take a session for people on how to use the tools to create the creatives and all that. Okay, either Canva or whatever the tools are there. It could be simple editing, putting text, putting photo, creating some simple graphics or whatever it is. Number 1. Number 2, maybe the next session could be about video. It's all about video. Like you record, you use Vidphone, you get the recordings or whatever it is, but you want to edit it, make it better, compromise, put your branding into it and other things. That could be the second one, right? The third thing that Jagat we could organize is also like, you had done that thing about integration in SDK, how to use the widget for live video chats on your website and all that stuff. So I think that's a very critical one, right? I mean, just something very crisp. It can't be for too long. Yeah. And it can't be just one session, right? It could be maybe 20, 30 minutes. Then after some time, the second session, a refresher session, whatever it is, right? So I think these are the kind of things that founders and other people who need. I know it's imposing on you. You're taking your time away from the hustle of building your business and customers and product. I know you're a product guy also. You and Akhil are working very, very hard. But just think about this. I mean, this is from the community point of view, right? We want to give back. And maybe this is a shout out also that, we should ask some other folks. Does someone want to do these sessions for us? But I think it's important for founders.
Yeah.
Simple things. Very, very
knowledge is power. And let us all, all of us, let's
correct. And of course, it has to be done very beautifully. It has to be very structured, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. Easy to, even a dumbass like me should understand it, should know how to implement it. Okay.
No, if you say dumbass like you, then what about all the people who are not as smart as you?
No, brother. I mean, these are things that I know Jagat trust me, especially founders who have come, like say in their 40s or their 50s or late 30s, whatever, right? And that's a huge amount of people. Yes. Fantastic skill sets in many ways. But they miss out in these few things, right? How to use digital tools for marketing and outreach, simple things. They don't have that confidence, right? Maybe we could help them out in a little bit way. Video etiquette.
I think a lot of value.
Yes, video sales calls. How do you use a platform like Vidphone to
Yeah.
do sales calls? How does a coach or a video trainer, or we had Subramaniam, who's a sales coach. We had Mr. Suresh Babu, who's doing so much work. We had him, I think, last week itself. They are dealing with so many people, correct? They
Right.
work with so many top-notch founders all over the world. So people like there are there. There are hundreds of these guys, thousands of these guys, correct? They should be your customers. I mean, not for free. At some point of time, I know you want to onboard them, you want to earn money from them, right? Because you also need to survive. But maybe
Survive, and as I said, main thing is that we want to serve society. So I mean, we want to ensure that we're getting money to put
exactly.
into our
But
fund.
but maybe we should get some community folks together to do a few simple 20-30 minute sessions on these
100%.
digital tools. Okay. Thank
Done.
you. और
Fantastic.
जयंती मुबारक हो सबको.
Gandhi Jayanti Mubarak.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. And 2 p.m. League of Extraordinary Startups. We're
Yeah.
having Sumit from Madhya Pradesh, already growing. I mean, just to give a shout out, I don't know how he's done it, but he seems to have grown his platform, got several thousand users, and he's bringing some crazy innovation into the game. So I'm going to enjoy that conversation and learn as always. And Jagat, you also will obviously come in and something fresh for tomorrow. Prepare something
Oh
new.
yes, I think
Okay?
RTI Wala is a great, and it's to do
Yeah,
also with the politics that we're,
yeah, 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 yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi. So
Yes,
following
yes.
through, I think we'll have it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Done deal. Take care.
All right, sir.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
everyone.
I hope everyone's had a wonderful session. See you tomorrow at on LXS, League of
Bye bye.
Extraordinary
Bye
Startups.
bye. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.